Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. I realized recently that this whole experiment with the Drunkalogs has become me pawing around in the dark for the meaning of life, hoping I'll find it in these conversations with strangers, these people who may or may not have charted a path through the madness to some kind of peace. My next guest certainly had lots of madness, from a childhood of lies and alcoholism and fake identities, to hustling low-grade investments on Wall Street, literally straight out of that film, The Boiler Room. But when push came to shove, he reached out for help, and his story shows the very specific way that on some level, that was all it took. Won't you please welcome Daniel Schwarzhoff. How do you say your name?
Schwarzhoff.
Schwarzhoff. Dan Schwarzhoff.
Dan Schwarzhoff. Yeah, that's my legal name. That's my real name. That's what I grew up with. And it turns out that I haven't got a drop of German blood in me at all. That's the German name.
Right.
I'm 100. I did my I went on 23andMe and all that stuff. And it turns out I'm 100% Irish. Hey, Ma, what happened?
How does that happen? That's so weird.
Well, that's part of my story too. That's my parents were divorced. I grew up in the Bronx in New York City. You from New York too? Did I hear something?
I'm from Long Island, yeah.
Oh,
I grew up in I was born in New York City, and then my parents moved to Long Island when I was about 3 or 4. So I spent, my formative years out in Locust Valley was the town I grew up in.
yeah. Locust. Oh, that's way out. That's out in Suffolk County, I think, isn't it?
No, it's Nassau. It's like closer than Oyster Bay. It's like sort of the area between Oyster Bay and like Roslyn.
Oh, sure.
Manhasset,
Sure. I was out in Roslyn a few weeks ago, actually, at the old, if you remember, my father's place.
No, I don't. Interesting. But what is it? Is it a restaurant?
It's a rock. What it's an entertainment venue. It's oh my God, they've had every rock act in the 70s has played there.
Oh, how amazing. I lived a pretty whatever. I moved. I went to boarding school when I was 14, and so I never really went back, I mean, I would go back and visit, but like I didn't really have much of a life in Long Island after I headed off to boarding school. So so I left before I was going to concerts, really. But so you grew up in the Bronx, yeah?
Bronx, yep, the beautiful Bronx, one of the wonderful 5 boroughs in New York City.
And when were you born?
1957.
1957, really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm 67 years old.
You look great, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what was your home life like? Were you guys like what'd your parents do, and do you have siblings?
Parents, yeah, I have younger sisters. We grew up in, I mean, it wasn't the worst of circumstances, but it really wasn't the best of circumstances. We came from what you would call a broken home.
Mm-hmm.
We called it a broken home back then. That kind of changed. The vernacular for that, I think, became a single parent household.
Right.
And which usually means that dad is gone.
Yeah.
Usually what it is. And that's what happened to us. My parents divorced. I think I was like 5 years old. I think it was about 5 years. Might have been. I don't know. You see, that's the thing about alcoholic families. You don't get the whole story. And
you don't.
It's a long time to put it together. I mean, the guy that I thought was my dad is not my dad, and my name is Schwarzhoff, and it's not Schwarzhoff. It's supposed to be Doherty, and who knows what.
Wow. So when your stepdad came in, you took him as your father, basically?
Yeah. My parents got divorced. It was a messy divorce. It was scary,
right.
Messy. I have these vague memories of shivering in my bedroom, listening to fighting, and there was some smacking going on and crying and people yelling and carrying furniture downstairs and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And it was very unpleasant. And apparently, I didn't know it at the time, but apparently I was a very curious kid. And after Dad was gone, well, the thing is, after Dad was gone, that was. I mean, I worshiped the ground that guy walked on.
Right.
All of a sudden, I don't have a dad anymore. You know, and
Right.
I used to literally. I remember for years, I would lay in bed at night and please, Dad, please God, bring my dad back. Please bring.
Right.
And I would just pray. You know, I grew up in it was a Catholic upbringing. We belonged
Right.
to a Catholic parish in the Bronx, Holy Family. And so I believed in God. So I had somebody to talk to, even if because Dad was my God before that.
Right. Wow.
And, we had visitation rights and stuff like that. But yeah, what happened was I started to tell you, I was a curious kid. So one day I was going through my mother's dresser drawers and I found all kinds of interesting things there. And one of the things I found, I tell part of this story, maybe I should tell this part of the story too. What I found was a big box and it said, super absorbent, absorbs odors. And I didn't know what the hell it was. And I opened it up and it's this big cotton thing in there.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, my poor mother, she must be putting these under her arms because she has
Right.
from, but it was Tampax.
Right.
And that's really what it was. But I didn't know. I had no idea what it was. So I didn't know what I was finding. So I found a file, and I opened
Right.
the file, and I'm reading, and there's this. Literally, this play is written out, and it's got characters and this story and this dialogue, and I'm reading through it, and it's got, and it's a horror story. It's got sexual things in it, which I didn't know anything about. I must
Right.
be about 7 years old. I could read at 7 years old.
Sure.
Not everything, but enough to piece this thing together. And it's got sexual mentions in it and accusations and scary stuff. Didn't know what it was. But it had my mother's name in it, and it had my father's name in it. And it wasn't a play. I was one of my favorite shows at the time was, do you remember Perry Mason, the TV show Perry Mason?
Sure. I never watched it, but they remade it recently for HBO.
Oh, okay. Well, it was Raymond Burr, great actor. And another one was The Defenders at the time was, I used to watch these courtroom dramas. So I
Right.
knew that what I was reading was not a storybook. This was real. This was an actual court transcript of my
Oh,
parents.
amazing.
It was their divorce. But I didn't know that at first until I was reading it. Oh my God, this is like a courtroom drama. And I realized that it was real. And I didn't understand it at all. And I was very, very taken aback by it. One of the characters was this New York City police officer, and his name was Bernard.
Right.
Cutting to the chase on that, Bernard moves into my house and sleeping with my mother.
Right.
And so that's how my stepfather, we call him a stepfather, but he was only there part time. He was my mother's boyfriend, you know.
Right.
And it was really, really not. He wasn't really much of a father. Later on, I find out when I'm 45 years old that he's actually my father. Yeah,
Oh, no way.
actually my father.
And his name was Bernard Darty?
Doherty, yeah. Yeah, his name is Bernard Doherty.
Wow. And so your mother had been like dating him at the same time she was dating your dad somewhere along the way. And
Apparently, and I have two younger sisters. The one that followed me was actually the dad, the marriage dad's daughter, and then my
Right.
sister after that was actually Bernard's daughter.
How did you figure all this out?
Only in the past few number of years. Oh, well, I contacted him. I was making amends, and
Right.
I contacted my father. We had a falling. I got in contact with him later on as an adult, and we had a bit of a falling out over the phone one day. That took about 10 years. I got sober, and I was making amends, and I called and I sent him a letter, and I told him, "Listen, I'm sorry, it was my fault. You know, I would like to get together with you. You have a son now. I'm married. Blah blah blah." And he sends a letter back to me saying, literally, like 3 days later, I got a letter. He must have written and gone to the post office the same day. He said, due to circumstances at the time of your birth, it's possible that I'm not your father. Would you want to get a blood test?
Wow.
I was like, I was 40 years old at the time, and like 42 years old or something like that. And I said, okay, yeah. And we got the blood test back. He's not my dad. And he says, I always wanted a son, and I always thought you were my son. I'm sorry, goodbye. And that was it. I haven't spoken to him since. It's over 25 years ago.
Is he still alive?
No, I did look up, and he died a number of years ago in Florida. He was down in Florida.
And so when your mom and he divorced and
Yeah.
you had visitation rights, how often would you see him?
Oh, I would see him pretty often. Like we became like fishing buddies.
Right.
Bought a boat. He had a boat out in Lindenhurst, and we would go fishing out. We would go out Fire Island Inlet out into the ocean there and do some
And
deep
this is
fishing.
in your childhood or as you got older?
This is well, my teenage years. I would say from the time I was 10, probably till the time I was 16 or 17. Yeah.
God, it's just so interesting that like
He thought I
you're
was his son too.
I know, and he spends all that time with you and he invests all this emotion in you, and then he discovers that like genetically you're not his son, and that's it.
He must have suspected it the whole time, you
I'm
know.
sure he did, but still it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there are people that come in and out of your life for a lot less significant reasons that you maintain relationships with, you know?
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
lot, man. And then did you confront Bernard at that point, at some point to say, "Hey, you're actually
well, yeah. Well, yeah. I let everybody in the family know at that point, he's already been. I mean, decades have gone by, and
right,
I've grown up. I've gotten married, and he and my mom, being the good Catholics that they are, they don't remarry. They don't marry. My mother never
right.
married him. Turned out he had another family somewhere so I've been in touch with my half brother and a half sister living down in Pennsylvania, and they had no idea either. Everything was a big secret, everything was a big secret. The thing was, though, this is how we became the alcoholic family, because not only was he a New York City cop, he was also a drunk, you know.
And was your first father Schwarzkopf?
Yeah.
It's not. Was he a drunk also?
No, no, I don't
No.
think so. No, well, he should. I mean, I don't think he was an alcoholic. No, I think he
Right.
probably was a heavy drinker, but I don't think he was an
Right.
alcoholic. Yeah,
So anyway, but well, Bernard's he's more in your life than your dad.
he is. He's in my life.
Yeah.
He is. He is. He actually became he got off of the police department and became a Greyhound bus driver,
Uh-huh.
and basically tried to support two families. So that's why it was hard, because he didn't make a whole lot of money as
Right.
as a cop and all that, but he had two families to support. So we were always struggling to pay the rent and all that kind of stuff, and he would come home, and he was a violent drunk too.
Right.
He my mother had black eyes a lot of the time, and she stuck with him all this time though.
Is she
And
still alive?
no, actually, they both passed within the past 10 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I forgave them and made amends to them and all of that stuff. And when he went into a home, I would visit him and things like that. But he never was. I didn't know he was my father even when he passed away. By the way, I only found out. Yeah, I found out. See, by that point, when it became clear that Schwarzhoff was not my father, I was told, well, then it must be Bernard. And I'm like, excuse me, I can't believe anything.
Yeah, sure.
That's what you say. For all I know, it could have been anybody at this point, because I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah,
Wasn't feeling it.
sure.
And
And you would expect to feel it, I mean, I think that's what we believe, that we would feel it, that we would know.
yeah, but I had this unhooked myself emotionally from him early on.
Sure, as you
So
would.
I really didn't I just didn't see him as my father. I didn't hate him.
Yeah.
I just I didn't like him though. Yeah, you know. But yeah, so what happened was I got with 23 and Me. I got an email one day from this woman. She's a principal in a school in the Bronx, and she says, I don't know, I got you. You came up in my search, and apparently we're related. And so I don't. She says, how is your name Schwarzhoff? I don't have any German in my family at all. How are we cousins or whatever we were? I think first cousins or second cousins maybe. I said, I have no idea. She said, well, so we have this exchange going back and forth, and she says, do you have anybody in your family named Doherty? And I went, uh-oh.
Oh my God. Wow.
Why do you ask? Well, apparently we share grandparents. And I'm like, no.
There's your answer.
So she sends me pictures of her grandparents, and I recognize them because I had met them before. I said, well,
Sure.
those are Bernard's parents. Yeah, so
Wow.
we're related. I'm related to this lady in the Bronx. And that's the only way that I found out. And then I got in contact with someone else I have cousins and nephews and nieces that I never met and never would have known about.
Sure.
You know, and I got in touch with my brother and sister down in Pennsylvania, and I told them the story, and they were like, now it all makes sense. It wasn't making sense. They were lied to also,
Yeah, yeah, that's wild. And so when did you start drinking?
I started drinking. My first drink I was about 13 years old. I had my first drink or my first drunk. I usually speak to my first drunk as my first drink because that was the only one that really mattered to me.
Sure.
But I had tasted little bits of whiskey and stuff like that before.
Sure.
But my first drug actually was nicotine. I started smoking, and yeah, it doesn't seem like a serious thing at the time, but we know a lot more about it now. It's not just cancer. It's nicotine is it's an antidepressant, and it makes you feel better.
Right.
Getting addicted to it for physical reasons, like a drug, any drug. You also get addicted to it emotionally. So I was smoking, but then my first drink came when I was 13 years old, and I was in Catholic school. Was in the 8th grade, and all the kids were drinking. They're all
right.
Gotta drink. Why? Because you feel great. It makes you. And I'm like, okay, I can feel great. I didn't feel so hot, and I had a friend named Sal, and this is in the Bronx. And Sal's parents were from Italy, and he used to make his own wine, and he used to keep these big giant jugs of wine in the basement. Sal, we thought it was great because Sal was, growing up in this Italian family, and they would have these big banquets at the house, and Sal was allowed to drink wine at dinner, and I'd never tasted wine,
Right.
So, well, get some of the wine. Get some of the wine, Sal. He goes, well, it's not that good. I said, no, just bring it. So he packed up. He got these. One day we had it all planned. It was a plan. We are getting drunk today. We got out of school early. It was Wednesday. I think we had. I think they had. I don't know if you remember this. I don't know what kind of school you went to, but we would have. We would let the public school kids would come in early, and we'd have to go home, and they would get religious instruction in our classroom.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So we went home. We got out early, and Sal went and he got 2 big giant mayonnaise jars. And he filled them up with this black liquid. It's like, and he put them in paper bags, and we took them up to this roof in the Bronx, this apartment building. We took the elevator up and went up to the landing and up on the roof, and said, well, let's just get drunk up here. So we did. We started drinking it, started downing it, and just pouring it down as fast as I could. And before you know it, the two of us were just gone,
Right.
gone. And I got sick, and I was, from what it was total blackout drunk. I would say 50% of my drunks were blackout drunks.
Right.
Something like that. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but there were a lot. Because that's how I knew it was a good drunk, when I couldn't remember anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Sweet oblivion.
Sweet oblivion, yeah. And we just got so drunk, and I was puking all over the place. I don't remember anything except sort of coming out of a blackout and being having puke all over my pants and shoes, and I was talking to a cop, on the standing in freezing cold, and he's going, "Does your mother know what you're doing?" Or and
Right.
he wanted to take me home and call my parents. I said no, and I left and I walked home. And I was so sick, and they say I was up on the edge of a roof, and I almost fell off the roof that we were up on. I mean, I could have died.
Sure.
And it was really something. And the funny thing is, as bad as and as sick as I got and everything else, I just couldn't wait to do it again. Couldn't.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, oh, that was terrible. I can't wait till the next time.
Right. Yeah.
Well, because I'm like, where's this stuff been all my life?
Right.
And then I spent the next, most of my high school years doing that, getting drunk.
Right. And did
Getting
you stay at that same Catholic high school?
yeah, that was actually grammar school.
Right.
And then, but I took the sport with me into high school. Absolutely, yeah. And
And did you graduate?
oh yeah, I graduated. It was St. Raymond's High School in the Bronx. I
Were you a
graduated.
decent student or?
I mean, I wasn't terrible. I was,
Right.
really smart, but I would drink every weekend. I lived to drink every weekend.
Sure.
So did all the kids that I hung out with.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's like that was what we did. I wasn't into sports really.
Me neither.
I didn't get into. I should have gotten into something like drama club or something like that. I never did.
Right.
And all I did was drink, and yeah.
And so then what happens? Do you go to college?
I went to City University, Lehman College in the Bronx. I started there for a couple of years, continuing to drink, and I dropped out. Then I transferred to Queens College and then dropped out of Queens College. So basically I went for like 2 years.
Were you working as well?
Yeah, I had started a business,
Which was what?
which was an office cleaning business.
Uh-huh.
I vacuuming and
Right.
carpets and all that sort of stuff. And I had a tiny little business going for myself down in the South Bronx, down in the Bronx, the Hunts Point Terminal Market, which is where all the produce comes in for the East Coast. And I had all sorts of I had clients on there, and I hired my own friends to come down, and we would come in there and work all night, and we'd drink while we were working.
Right.
Shampoo carpets and clean windows and take out the garbage and all that, empty ashtrays and all that sort of stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's what we did. And yeah, and at that time, now I was a teenager at that time. I was only like I just graduated, so I'm like 18 years old.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it, but looking back, I didn't know it at the time. But looking back now, it's clear to me that I was also suffering from what you would definitely call depression. I was absolutely,
Sure.
And at that time, it wasn't diagnosed in young people really very much. And, mostly older people got depressed and they put them away in an asylum somewhere,
Right.
They don't have asylums anymore, We have rehabs. And yeah, I was depressed and I didn't know it. And so I didn't have antidepressants. I didn't have,
Right.
nothing, nobody was going in my head and meddling with the dopamine and serotonin and all that stuff. But I was doing it myself. With the smoking, and also, but with the drinking. I was
Yeah,
drinking.
for sure.
You can't live like that. You can't live in pain like that, And the pain that I had was basically resentments that I didn't know that that's what it was. I didn't know why I felt restless, irritable, and discontent all the time. No idea. I learned that by coming to the program, and that's where I learned that stuff.
So this is 18 years old or so.
Yeah.
When do you get sober?
I got sober. I had a career that went on. Drinking. I had a lot of false starts and stops. Stop drinking, start drinking, stop drinking, start drinking. Simply, and not in any program or any rehabs or anything like that. Rehabs weren't very fashionable back then.
Sure.
Now they're pretty fashionable.
Yeah. I'm dying to go to rehab.
Yeah.
Just give me a break.
Yeah, I know. I actually worked in a rehab for a couple of times,
Right.
several of them, but that was after I was sober. No, I wound up on Wall Street. I wound up working for, well, at first I started a newspaper. I've done all kinds of stuff, you know.
So, all right, well, cool. But so you drop out of Queens and because you're drinking too much and your grades suck, or why?
Uh, um, yeah, all the above.
Right, right.
I'm not doing real well. I can't concentrate. I'm not, you know, I'm just not able to concentrate on my work.
And
I
you're paying for it yourself?
Yeah, it was City College, and at that time they had open admissions, and I was paying for. Basically, you had to pay for your books, and you did have to pay a bit. Now I think it's totally free, but it wasn't a
Right.
lot. It wasn't a lot of
Wasn't a
money.
lot of money, right?
No, and I did get a student loan,
Right.
which I didn't spend on books or anything. I just,
Right, right.
you know, yeah. So,
So what do you do after you drop out?
so after I dropped out, I wound up doing in numerous jobs and businesses. I got into marketing. I became a an advertising manager for a company. I wound up leaving that company. I started a newspaper in New York. In New York, it was a trade paper serving the fruit and vegetable industry, and I did that for a while. That actually did quite well. I wasn't getting along with my partners,
Hmm.
as you can imagine, because I'm drinking, they're not.
Right.
And you know, I also dabbled in some of the more exotic substances, not LSD or anything like that, but you know, I tried cocaine and tried the pot and stuff like that.
Right.
But it was the drinking that really attracted me, you know, that worked well.
Sure.
And I left there, and I got out of I was basically in the in the produce industry, okay,
Sure.
selling imported fruit and vegetables from Chile and South America and even Europe, things like that. And I developed quite a good business. I was making very good money, and
Right.
I decided that I don't want to work for anybody anymore. So I had this vision to start a gourmet supermarket out in
Hmm.
Comac, Long Island. So I
Hmm.
opened up a store out there, and I took on some investors, and I wound up with two stores.
What was the stores called?
The name, well, the store in actually I had one in Farmingdale. I don't remember what the name of it was. But
Amazing.
the one in Comac, the one in Comac was called Danny's Crisp and Fresh.
Right.
That was the name of it. And it was good. We had a deli, we had a produce department, dairy, bakery. It was really good. And the money that was put into it, I found out was actually it was actually money that was laundered through some mobster who was
Right.
told me it was his own money. They was hey, I'll give you 100 grand. You know,
Right.
so oh yeah, definitely, yeah, you'll be my partner. Are you going to be a silent partner, right? Oh, totally silent. Don't worry. And then he put the money in, and it was like, you know, in conversation one day, I find out that, yeah, this is like drug money that came down from Boston, you know, from some club. And
Right.
I'm like, oh no. And I felt so bad about it. I said, I can't do it.
Right.
You know, so I just let it go. So then that's when I went to Wall Street. And I went to Wall Street. I had a career. I worked on Wall Street in the financial services industry for like 17 years.
Wow. Where'd you go? Who'd you work for?
I started off at a firm. I started off at a small little firm that was like the name of the firm was Green Tree Securities. Turns out they weren't very legitimate.
Right.
I was selling stock I got my license, you know, to sell stock and everything, and drinking the whole time, by the way,
Right.
and they all did too. Everybody was on drugs and drinking.
Oh yeah, totally.
If you couldn't drink at work, so they were just snorting in the bathroom, you know.
Right.
And there was this company that we were selling stock for. It was a startup company, and it was located out in Brooklyn. And they had this new technology, and it sounded fantastic. And I'm calling up people and putting them into this stock. And I get in my car one day, and I drive out. I said, I want to see this place. And I drove out to Brooklyn, and I get off the exit, and it was right off the Bell Parkway, and it was supposedly like, you know, right off the Parkway. And I went in, and I said, well, this is the place. It was a swamp.
Total bogus company.
Total bogus company, completely. I
It's
went
like the
back.
boiler room.
Well, it was,
Yeah.
and I left.
Right.
Right, I said it's bogus. It's all BS. It's nothing here. So that firm wound up getting turned down. After I left, though, me and this other fellow left there, and we went to this other firm. It's called JT Moran.
Uh-huh.
They made a movie about us,
What was
and
that called?
that was Boiler Room.
Oh, Boiler Room was. Yeah, yeah. I remember reading the script.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool.
I read it like when it was floating around as a spec, and like I was working at Phoenix Pictures. We almost made it.
Oh, okay. So the script that you read, that
Yeah.
dialogue, I wrote it.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, well, not literally, not literally.
Right.
It was when I saw that. I didn't see that movie for
Right.
like 10 years. I couldn't bear to go see it. I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And after I was sober, and one day I rented VHS was still around, and I rented it, and I watched it, and I couldn't believe it. I
Is it
couldn't.
you? Can you see yourself in the?
Oh
Can you
yeah,
recognize which character's you?
oh yeah, Ben Affleck.
Who wrote the script? I can't even remember.
I don't no, no, no. When I say I wrote the script,
No, no, I know what you're saying, but like I'm just sort of that was your life. It wasn't actually that guy didn't actually he wasn't actually in your boiler room.
it had to be. He
You
had
think
he had to be.
right.
Somebody there that worked at that company, worked with the writer. I would love to find out who it was.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
I have my
'Cause, I mean,
sister.
I remember being like, oh, this is a cool idea, and we sort of flirted with it, and then we didn't make it.
Yeah. Yeah, there were words and there were
Ben
things.
Younger was the filmmaker and the writer.
Yeah, I don't know why that name sounds familiar to me. I may have looked it up back then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I was looking for
Anyway,
a familiar name. Well, someone at the very least consulted on that.
right.
Someone from the inside. Now there were
Amazing.
characters that were mixed up. Like one character, his name is Greg. I said, well, and Greg is this guy, but Greg was actually, you know, the boss, and the guy who's the boss, his name is Mike, but Mike is actually, they mixed up the names, and you know, there wasn't exactly 100%, but a lot of the lines and a lot of the stuff that was, and I mean a lot, was actually said. Those words were actually done. You know, that meeting, there's a meeting I forget the name, I forget the character's name, but
I don't remember it at all, to tell you the truth. But I just remember the title and that we didn't do it.
they they occurred. Those words were said. Those people were there. That meeting actually occurred. I was in tears when I watched the movie. I couldn't believe it. I was actually, I wept watching. I almost had,
Well, so Ben went to Queens College. I'm just looking at his IMDb, at his Wikipedia page, the writer. And then in 1995, he attended an interview for a job in a brokerage firm and immediately conceived the idea that went on to become the first film, Boiler Room. He spent 2 years researching the underground telemarketing brokerage industry as background for his screenplay.
okay. So the interview that he went on, that's probably the scene in the movie because it's accurate. It's 100. That meeting happened. That happened.
Right. Amazing.
I was there. It happened.
How cool. That's wild. I'll have to check out the film again.
But
And
those,
so you guys start your I can't remember. Did you say you started your own firm at that point?
at that point, there was a couple of friends. At the end of that movie was totally bogus. Everything was accurate in that movie except the ending. The ending was totally
Right.
bogus. There were people there that were not crooks. There were people that weren't, doing pump and dump schemes.
Sure.
There was a lot of it going on, but there were people that weren't doing it, and I was not doing it.
Right.
I did not steal any money from
Sure.
little old ladies and put them into companies that are in swamps. But
Right.
so me and this other fellow who was one of the managers there left and actually went down legitimately to Wall Street and took over a firm down a BD down there, and I became an officer in the company, and we started running that down there. At that time, my drinking was really getting out of hand, and I wasn't doing a good job. I wasn't doing a good job. I brought some money into the firm, but and just it wasn't working. It wasn't working,
Right.
and it was really. There was some issues with some mobsters were threatening to put us out of business down there. It was really these are not we're not talking Goldman Sachs here.
Yeah. I get it.
These are very, third tier firm,
Right.
boutique firm. And the biggest deal I ever worked on was, I don't even think it was $10 million. It was
Right.
$7 or $8 million. So I would work on these to like $3 and $5 million deals, and which sounds like a lot of money, but they're not on
Right.
Wall. That's nothing. That firm, we wound up closing it down. It was a disaster. There's just too much corruption going on with a lot of the brokers. We took on some brokers from Jordan, from Jordan Belfort. Took on some of when his place exploded.
Right.
When he exploded, we took on some of his brokers. They were a total disaster. And we just basically filed what they call a BDW, which we had waiting in the fax machine, ready to go. It's called BDW, means broker dealer withdrawal. It means
Right.
NASD were out of business,
Right.
and we were. And then I went to another small firm, and I became vice president of mergers and acquisitions for another very small firm. And that was, at that time, that was when my son was born, and that's when I got sober.
Right.
That's when I got sober.
And what prompted? It's a great story. I really enjoyed every beat of it so far. So what prompted you to get sober? I mean, my children being born was certainly a big part of why I got sober. But was there any sort of like specific event where you were like, oh, this is it?
Like you would think, like a lot of people would look and say, well, you got sober because your son was born. I think there's some of that is in there because my responsibilities as a dad were rearing its head, and I really had to accept that. But I didn't get sober the day he was born or anything like that. He was, months old. But I was, what happened, the last week of my drinking, I come home one night and my wife, Nancy, was quite unhappy because it was like, 3:00 in the morning or something like that. And I wasn't falling down drunk or anything, but I have this history, and she's really upset. And I said, look, I promise I will not drink for the rest of the week, She said, all right, well, we'll see how that works out. So that was like on a Sunday night. Monday night, I go down, working down to Wall Street and doing my thing, totally sober. I was a three-day guy,
Right.
3 days. Like if I drank on a Sunday, I would not feel good until Wednesday.
Right.
But I felt really good on Wednesday. I would start getting my energy back and all that stuff. I find out later that's how long it takes for the alcohol to get out of your system.
Right.
And I'm going, and Monday's going, I'm feeling better. But Wednesday comes along, and I'm feeling great. I'm feeling finally fantastic. And I get a phone call. It's my friend of mine. He works for, I won't mention the name, but it's a big bank. And he runs a mutual fund for them.
Right.
And it's mainly bonds. And the market's doing great that day. I wasn't a market guy. I don't play the market. The market goes up and down. I didn't care. I'd make money anyway. Right. I was a deal guy,
Right.
He calls me up and he says, "Oh man, the market's down, and the bond market, and are interested. What do you think's going to happen tomorrow? They're going to announce the interest rates are going on." I said, "I don't know what's going on." And he's like frantic, I go, "What do you want me to do?" He goes, "I think let's go have a beer at the Bell."
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm under curfew at this.
Right.
So I had to tell him, what any alcoholic would tell. I said, "Yeah, be there at 4:00. I'll meet you."
Right.
And we hang up the phone, and that's like 10:00 in the morning. Noon comes along, and he calls me back, and he says, we're still on for today, right? I go, "Yeah, we're still on." I knew him very well. We were friends. The story when we were drinking when I was in the 8th grade, we were lifelong friends.
Right. Amazing.
We taught each other how to drink,
Right.
He just didn't go as far with it as I did for whatever reason. But I could hear him on the phone. He's frantic. He wants a drink. That obsession. He needed a drink. He absolutely needed a drink. He had that obsession for it, And I said, all right. And then, but now I'm thinking, he's reminding me, of how good this might get. And he called one more time. He called like 2 o'clock. He goes, "Don't hang me, don't leave me hanging." I said, "I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'll be there. I'll be in the corner, Broad and Wall." He worked right on Wall. I worked on Broad. I'll meet you right there, right after the bell. The bell is 4 o'clock. That's when the market closes. So the bell goes, 4 o'clock, and I'm there. I'm there. Put my jacket on. I'm out the door. Down the elevator, out the lobby, through the revolving doors. I'm out on Broad Street, and I'm shooting up toward the New York Stock Exchange, which is where I'm going to meet him in front. It's that corner, that famous corner where they got the picture, statue of George Washington and all that. And I can see him. I can see, he's a tall guy, and I could see him up there, and he waves to me, and he comes down, he meets me halfway down the street. He goes, "Let's go." I said, "Well, let's go to Harry's." Harry's was a famous watering hole down on Wall Street. So we start heading down, our power ties are flapping behind us. We're going so fast. And he's like drooling, not literally, but I just like, wow, we both want this. He goes, "You know what? Let's not go to Harry's. Let's go to Houlihan's. It's right here. We don't have to walk all the way to Harry's, and it's cheaper." I'm like, okay, that's And we go in, and if you're probably not familiar with the place, but it's a beautiful bar. I mean, they have this huge oak bar with brass rails, and it's Wall Street, right? Brass railings, and we're very important when we go in there,
Right.
And I just remember they had a big screen TV, and Ozzy Osbourne is blasting "No More Tears." I don't know, it just adds to the surrealism a little bit. But I'm listening to that, and I said, "All right, 2 Amstel Lights. Going to drink light beer, right?" And the bartender comes, and he brings out these big frosted mugs, and I just picked it up, and I looked at it, and they talk about romancing the drink. It was like 97 degrees outside. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, "Oh my God, this is beautiful." It's like foam, it's like vapor coming off the top, and the condensation is running down the sides. And I don't know if you're like, I know you're an alcoholic, if you identify with this or not. I think you might. But I looked at it, and it wasn't in words actually, but I thought, when I looked at how the level of the beer in that mug, and I thought, it just occurred to me, my eye drew like a line down to like a third down. I said, by the time that beer gets down to here, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to feel better. It's like, because that's what it was all about. It was about feeling, I know it was 96 degrees and I was thirsty, but that's not what this is about. This is about,
it's about feeling good.
About feeling good. And looking back on that, I'm like, wait a minute. What do I have to feel good about? I mean, I was having a great day. I was sober that day. I was doing well. I was going to really impress my wife by not having a drink all week. Why suddenly do I need to feel better about what? And that's that restlessness, irritable discontentment stuff that we talk about sometimes. And it's like, I don't know. I just had to feel better. Looking at my, it's not to blame parents, but I'm just saying my upbringing led to some bad feelings,
For sure.
About the way things happened. And he downed it. We're feeling better, And I put the mugs up, and I said, "Another round." And my friend, his name is Rich, he goes, "Oh, no, not me." I'm like, what? He's like, I said, you said that we're gonna drink. He says, "Yeah, we just did." His obsession is gone. His obsession is totally. Are we going over?
No.
Okay, good. I talk a lot.
No, that's good.
And he looks at me and goes, "No, I had it. That's it." So I'm thinking, well, where's the, he wanted this as much as I did, and suddenly he's okay. Now, me, I'm screwed. I know I'm screwed because I know that once I had a drink, I don't stop.
Yeah.
Stop. And I was adamant. I go, "You know what? I promised my wife I was not going to drink. I'm going home. I'm definitely going home." So, all right, if he can go home, he had apparently his wife was having a barbecue that night. He had to be home at 7:30, and that was his excuse,
Right.
It's all right. So I'm going home too. In fact, I'm going to take out a little insurance policy. I'm going to go, and I'm going to call my wife. She worked up on 34th Street. And maybe she'll meet me at Penn Station, and we'll take the train out together because maybe we can time it that we're both going home at the same time.
Where are you guys living at this point?
We're living in Queens.
Right.
Yeah, we're living in where were we at that time? I don't know. We lived in a couple of different. I think it was Bayside, Queens at that time.
Right.
And yeah, it was definitely Bayside. And I called her up. I said, she goes, "Where are you?" I'm Rich. I'm coming home. And what's for dinner? She says, "Well, I'm going to leave in a little while." I said, "Well, you want to meet me at Penn Station? We'll take the train together." "No, I got to go now. I'm going to go ahead of you. I'm making chicken cutlets for dinner. Just be home." I said, "Well, yeah, I'll be on the 7:25. I'll be home by 8:30, and we'll have dinner together." And fine, everything was good. So, well, now I got to go home, right? I have to go home. So, and we left. We walked over to the World Trade Center. And when it was still there, and I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but right on the corner, we just walked into the corner entrance, and I go down the escalator into the concourse, and he goes off to the left to Amtrak or whatever train takes him out to New Jersey, out to Morristown, and I go straight down into the subway to the 1 and 9, and I get on the train, and I'm heading up to 34th Street. I'm going to get the Port Washington line out to Bayside.
Right.
And I get on, and it's packed. It's absolutely packed. And I mean packed. Like, the lady in front of me is banging her butt into me, and there's a guy next to me, and we're going like that. But everybody's well dressed. It's Wall Street, And this guy next to me, he turns to me and he says, "I smell your alcohol." And I wasn't a violent person, but verbally I could be pretty violent.
Right.
I was just about to, and as he's looking at me, I just felt like the Amstel in my belly it just stirred and just started to come up, and it was like this, and where am I going, who are you going
to barf on?
Yeah. Let's see, the lady, I should get him. He's the one. So I didn't know what to do. I pulled up my briefcase, I snapped it open, I shot it into the briefcase, snapped it shut, and put it back down on the floor.
Oh my God.
I didn't know what else to. Oh, you want to hear something funny, brother? I still have that briefcase.
Amazing.
And the guy is looking at me. He's horrified. He's like, and the lady, I don't know if she realized what just almost happened to her, but she's like, she must have smelled it. I don't know. So I was mortified. Yeah. Train stopped. I got off at the next stop. I'll get the next train. And it took off, and I go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that." And I'm just standing there. And I look down the tunnel, and I can see the next train. Okay, well, there's another train. I'm not going to make the 7:25, whatever train I was going to make, but Nancy can hold chicken cutlets 15 minutes, it's not a big deal. And I said, I got to get this taste out of my mouth, And there was a bar right upstairs. It was Murray Street, and there was a place upstairs. I got off, and I went upstairs. I said, "I'll just get the next one," and I went to get I figured I'd just wash it down I'll just get another drink, just one to wash it down, get rid of the taste, and I didn't come home till 5:30 in the morning. Nothing.
I'm just so familiar with that story.
Everybody listening
not the specifics of it, but I certainly remember like when one of my friends was trying to get sober, and I was like, he's like, sometimes I can drink like totally normally, and sometimes I can't, and I'm like, yeah, that's the thing, is you just never know. You never know which night it's going to be, Am I going to have one drink and go to sleep like a civilized human, or am I going to get off the train, duck into some bar, and 10 hours later everyone's wondering if I'm still alive.
Exactly. Well, that's what happens, and it's tricky because sometimes you do it okay, and you figure, well, like I did fine last weekend, I'll do it again this weekend, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And I came home late, 5:30 in the morning. It was pretty terrible, and that was the turning point. You asked me. I'm actually answering the question what the turning point was, because I came home and Nancy was awake and she was on the couch. She was crying, and she said, "You did it again."
Right.
Did it again. And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, why do you do this? Why do you do this?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know why." And she said, "I know why." She says, "Because you're an effing liar." That's what she said. And Nancy did not have a foul mouth,
Right.
And she's right. I was turning into a liar. I was turning into a terrible liar. She would be. I would lie about anything. She would say, bring home a bag of onions. Stop off at, and I bring home a bag of onions. Oh, did you get them at the Korean grocer? It's like, yeah, they have good onions there. Meanwhile, I went to A&P. Why?
Right.
Well, just to stay in shape. I would just tell little lies. But because I think what happens is we don't want to be this. I'm speaking really for myself, but I work with a lot of alcoholics, and they identify with this. We don't want to be found out. We don't. And if you know what I'm thinking, it would be very embarrassing for me, because you might know that I'm planning another drink somewhere down the line.
Right.
I'm planning to go, for an addict. Sometimes I'm going to go cop at this place.
Right.
You don't want anybody to figure you out at all.
Right.
So you have this, they get this isolation thing going all the time. People talk about that all the time. And just telling lies when the truth would have sufficed,
Right. Right.
And that's what happens. And she said, well, you got to do something. I said, okay, I know. I couldn't think of anything. I told you that I had just false starts and stops all of my life. And it always stopped when I got in. I've always believed in God. I've always believed in, I'm not a religious person. I don't even belong to a religion. I'm just not one of the religious types. But I do believe in God, and I do believe in spirituality, and I do have a connection with God. But every time I gave him the finger and started doing my own thing, that's when everything fell apart. And I've usually prayed, and I've been a meditator for a long time, for years and years and years. I meditated, and I told her, and she knew what that meant when I said, I'm going to start meditating, because I had stopped. I said, I'm going to start meditating again. She knew what that meant, because I had worked in the past, and she said, okay. But this time she didn't stand there just with that. She said, what else are you going to do?
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, she wants me to go to rehab or something, And I'm thinking, well, I can't do that. And which I didn't do. I've never been at rehab. I've never been at a hospital. Never. And so I said, I'm going to call AA. And she said, AA? I said, yeah. Now, I didn't know anything about it. I knew roughly what it was,
Right.
I thought that I said, yeah, they show people how to drink properly,
Right.
That's what and honestly, I'm not an ignorant man, but
Yeah.
I had no idea. I didn't know.
Sure. What year is this?
This is 19. This had to be 97.
Right.
97. I'm 27 years sober.
Right.
And so I said, yeah, I'm going to call. I'll call AA, and we'll work something out. And that was like on a Wednesday. I didn't call him on Thursday. I didn't call him on Friday. On Friday, actually, I did. Actually, Friday is the day I called him. I didn't call him the next day, but I called them on Friday. But what I did do is I set up on the table. I set up the yellow page. At that time, we had yellow pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pages was open up to AA. I circled AA. Had the phone next to it. Like a little monument there, so she would see that I really had good intentions. And finally, Friday, I called him up and I told him it was Queens Intergroup, and the guy answered the phone. He said, tell me what's going on. I told him, and he said, you want to know what I think? I said, yeah. He says, I think you have a very serious drinking problem.
Right.
I'm like, really? Really serious? He said, well, put it this way. He says, you can't drink anymore because you got this, you got to stop. And I went, okay, I will. I'll stop. I promise. He said, no. He says, you got to stop today. And I said, well, I'm not today. He said, yeah, you can't drink anymore. I said, starting today.
Yeah.
And I said, well, can't you send me a brochure or something? Maybe have a catalog. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Give me the different plans. Give me, like
all or nothing.
Yeah.
Or the 2 drink a week plan. How do you do that?
Right. And he said, no, you have to. And I said, well, maybe, how about Sunday? If I stop Sunday, that gives me time to. He goes, no. He says, I tell you what, I'd already given him my address. I told him where I lived. He says, we're going to have somebody over there in an hour. There's a meeting in Flushing at 7:30. We'll be there. Somebody will be there to pick you up.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, you're not. Don't be ridiculous. He says, well, you have to stop. I said, look, I promise. Is there a meeting I can go to tomorrow? He said, yeah, that meeting can go tomorrow. He said, he gives me the address. He said, can you make it till tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I can make it till tomorrow. You know, what does he think he's dealing with here?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Listen, I could go weeks at a time without a drink if I wanted to. I was what they would call a functional alcoholic.
Yeah.
Except for the times I peed my pants on the Long Island Railroad, but that's another story. And I went to that meeting the next day. I went to that meeting. I went to it. He told me where it was. It was called the Clearview meeting in Bayside, Queens. They call it the bagel meeting because they serve bagels there. And I walked in, and everybody was walking out. And there was this guy there carrying a big coffee urn. And he looked like he was in charge somehow.
Right.
The coffee. So I said, are you in charge? He said, yeah, I'm in charge. How can I help you? I said, well, I'm looking for the AA meeting. He says, well, you just missed it.
Right.
And I said, oh, shucks. He said, yeah, he said, but I tell you what, you see those people sitting back there? And he was pointed to the back of the cafeteria. There was people sitting in the corner. He goes, go back there and do whatever they tell you to do.
Right.
So, okay. So I went back, and apparently after that meeting, they had started up, and I missed the meeting. I got the time mixed up, and I was, I thought it was 5 minutes late, and I missed the whole thing. And I went there, and don't you know, there's people sitting in a circle, and there's one seat there, just one seat. Go figure, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down, and and the meeting had already started, and the woman is sitting there, and she pulls out this book, and I go, oh no.
Right.
Oh,
it's a Bible.
Yeah, exactly. I said, oh crap, it's a Bible study or something. And I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? I have to get up. Maybe they have a break, and then I'll leave during the break.
I'll sneak out, yeah.
Sneak out, And she starts reading this story. And she's reading it. And what she would do is she would read it and then close it and then share on it and then pass it to the next person. And they I guess they're reading a page at a time. And I'm listening, and I'm sitting there like this, and I got my head up like this, and I'm going, oh no. And they're going on and on, and they're reading this story about this guy named Bill,
Right.
And I'm listening to this story about this guy named Bill, and he's a stockbroker. And I'm going, oh, a stockbroker, huh? And he goes, and he can't stop drinking. And I'm listening, and his wife would come home and find him drunk. And I'm going, yeah, And one time she came home, and he was swinging on a fence, passed out. And they're talking about this stuff, and I'm going, holy crap. And she worked in Manhattan, in a department store. I'm like, what? On 34th Street. No, 30.
Right.
This can't be.
Right.
It's like, what is this? A setup? Nancy said, and by the time and I'm listening to his story and the misery that he and his wife are going through, and by the time the book got to me, I was a mess, total mess.
Right.
The tears are running down. I can't believe it. I can't believe what I'm hearing. And they get the book to me, and I reach for the book, and I put it over my head and give it to the guy next to me. I'm like, But that's why I say, sometimes I'll say, I was 12-step by Bill W.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's no lie. And I went outside, and they told me that there was another meeting that night that I should go to, and at another location, Little Neck, Douglaston. They told me to go. And there's this guy outside, and I was talking to him. He gives me his card. He owns a printing company, and he says, he's been sober for 20 years. And I go, 20 years? Are you kidding?
Right. Yeah,
you haven't in 20 years? He said, no. I said, well, how long would I have to go? He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, yeah, not 20 years. I said, but how long would somebody like me have to stop drinking? And he's like, well, you don't ever drink again.
Right.
I'm like, what? You don't, it was like, it just seemed so severe, It was,
Yeah.
how can that be? Because I said, what do you mean? He goes, no, we don't ever drink again. He says, well, just, we do it a day at a time, but all the days add up for the rest of your life by the time. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So I went to another meeting that night, That was my first AA exposure,
Yeah.
And I'm meeting all these recovery people. And Nancy was working late that night, and I had my son, and he's not even 1 year old at that time. And the only thing I do is I had to take him to the meeting because
Right.
I asked about that. They said, oh, no, they love if you take your kids.
Sure.
I said, okay. So I took him and I drove out to, now I know that it's funny. This always whenever I tell this story, it always rings in my head. On the way there, I heard on the radio that Lady Di had
Right.
killed. She was the same Lady Di was killed in the car accident. And I got to this meeting, and I had my son with me in a stroller, and get to the door, and there's this guy there, big giant guy with an earring. He goes, hey, cuz, you knew?
Right.
And I said, there's a beginners meeting already started. Go right down. And I said, no, I'm not a beginner. He says, oh, I never seen you here before. I said, no, I already went to a meeting this morning. This is my second meeting. He looked at me, he goes, you're a beginner. He held me downstairs. He helped me take Danny out of the stroller and all that stuff. And I walked in, and I walk into these, it's like this huge fire door, this steel door, and I push it open, and I've never been to a meeting other than that one. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going to go on, and I open up the door, and all I know is I don't want anybody to see me. I'm going to sneak in because I don't want them, jumping on me like they did at that other place, telling me where to go and all this stuff. And I walk in and I push it open, and I can't believe what I see. It's just like, it's a big room, fairly big room, and it's got all these tiny little chairs, little kindergarten chairs with all these big drunks stuffed into them. And evidently it's a day school in the daytime, and this is where they're sitting, and they're sitting. So I got Danny under me. I'm sweating bullets. It was in the middle of a heat wave, and I sneak off to the side, and I sit down. And I want to be noticed. Now, I don't know. Now I know. If a guy walks into a meeting and he's sweating and he's got a baby under his arm and you've never seen it before, you're going to notice.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to. Am I going on too long with this story?
No, keep going.
Okay.
I mean, we should, the audience only has so much patience. So
that's what I'm saying. This is not a conference I'm doing here. This is a neat little podcast. Well, you'll cut whatever you need. And I'm sitting there and at this meeting, and I'm listening to the people, and I'm listening to what they're saying. And there's this guy sitting across from me, all the way on the other side. He's looking at me like this. This guy was scary looking. He looked like the Sopranos.
yeah.
I forgot the actor's name. The guy who played Leotardo.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he looked like that guy, and he's like looking at me like this, and he gets up and he starts walking over. He walks over, and I look, and there's no place for him to sit. Thank God, he can't sit next to me. But he comes up to the next guy next to me, and he looks at him, and the guy jumps up and he sits down right next to the guy, and now he's right like this, right next to me, and he's poking little Danny. He's giving him goo-goos and all that stuff. And he leans over and he says to me, how do you feel? And I said, I feel like crap.
Right.
And he says, good. That's good. And he's smiling, And I'm like, is this guy a sadist? Or no?
Right.
And well, he knew what I didn't know. It's that, the worse you feel, the better your chances are of accepting them.
Right.
Yeah. You feel good, you might not do anything drastic.
Right.
Because it's pretty drastic recovering. recovery is like the most drastic thing an alcoholic or a drug addict will ever have to do, you know? And he says, good. And I'm listening to the stories that are going on. And honestly, I wasn't identifying with what I was hearing there, because this one woman said that she starts crying, and she says, she had 3 days back. And I don't know what this means. I got 3 days.
Right.
And she's crying, and her name is Mary, and they're going, "Oh, what happened, Mary?" And oh, she says everything was going so well. She says, I had 14 days, and I slipped on soap, and crying, and they start clapping. I'm like, what are they clapping at? They're clapping
Right.
at. I mean, keep coming, Mary, keep coming. And she slipped on soap and drank over it. I don't understand these people. Meeting ended, and this guy, his name was Barry. He started talking to me. He says, "Do you think you're one of us?" And I said, "No, I don't think I'm one of you." I said, I don't identify with half the stuff I hear here. I just don't know anything about this. And I said that Mary, who slipped in a bathtub, I said, that would never happen to me.
Right.
And he said, "What do you mean Mary slipped in a bathtub?" I said, "Mary fell in the bathtub and got drunk." And he looked over and he said, "What do you," he said, "I don't understand." I said, "She just said that she slipped on soap and fell." And he said, "Mary didn't slip on soap. She slipped on scope." And I said, "Oh my God." He says, "It's got alcohol in it. Once she gets alcohol,
Yeah.
she can't stop drinking." And a little light bulb went on and went, "Holy crap. Could this be possible? I never heard of such a thing. It never
Right.
occurred to me."
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, I wanted to know more, you know, and the guy took me upstairs and he told me all about the obsession to drink, and he told me about the phenomenon of craving. He started telling me a lot about Dr. Silkworth and all the stuff that's in the big book, you know, important stuff. And it just blew my mind. It made so much sense. I'd never considered that physical phenomenon that when you take it in, you don't stop once it's in. And then and I realized I can't stop once it's in, and I can't not put it in.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a vicious cycle. How am I going to get out of? And he explained it to me. And that's the guy. He started taking me through the steps and all that stuff. His name was Barry, and he's the guy that if he wasn't there to explain to, I wasn't coming back.
Right.
No way I was coming back. I didn't know what these people were talking about. You
And
know?
did you stay sober from that point forward?
I say, yeah, stay sober. Yeah.
Nice. So that was it. That was the eureka moment.
Yeah, that was a turning point. I mean, then I moved away from there and came up to the Cape and all that sort of stuff. But no,
Did you stay married?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Saint Nancy.
You're still with Nancy?
Saint Nancy. She still lives here.
And you guys have one kid or more?
We have two. We had one daughter who was born here. She was. I always say she was built. No, she was manufactured. No, I forgot. It's an old joke, but she was built in New York and manufactured on Cape Cod. I live on Cape Cod.
Where in Cape Cod are you?
I am. We moved up to the Hyannis.
Nice.
We moved up to the Hyannis area, and we moved away from Hyannis. Now we have a nice home in Centerville. Right on.
And when you got sober, how else did your life change at that point? Did you stop being a Wall Street guy?
Yeah, I didn't go back to Wall Street. I probably never will.
Right.
Because at that time, because that was part of me. You know, you took, what we were like or what it was like. What it was like is what I'm telling you. What I was like was I was just an overambitious, power and money hungry scumbag.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And, a lot of stuff, we were talking about the stuff in that movie. And, I did a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it wasn't stealing, but it was absolutely treating people and their money for my own advantage and really not looking out for them, but looking out for myself and looking out for the firm and basically looking out for myself, not caring if anybody really made money or didn't make money.
And so how long was it till you left the city?
Sober?
Yeah.
After sober, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only about, was less than 2 years. Yeah, a little over, it was a little over a year. Yeah, I had a year anniversary down in New York, and then we moved up here. I got I was not going back to Wall Street. I'm not even sure they would have me. You know?
Right.
And I got a phone call. I got a job offer to come up here and to run a marketing and sales division of a or actually to start a division up here for a resort company,
Right.
and they wanted it in Boston, even though they were located here on the Cape. And I did. I went up there and I started that up, and then that was taken over by another company, which I didn't stay for.
Right.
And I said, what am I going to do? I'm stuck on Cape Cod.
Right. Right.
What am I going to do? Go fishing? And what I decided to do was I decided to go back into financial services again, but I didn't want to go back to Wall Street.
Right.
So I went to work for New York Life and became a life insurance salesman. Did that for a number of years and built up a little business with that. And my wife joined me in that business, so she started doing it too. And then at some point, and I stayed sober the whole time, and she stayed in it. I got out of that after a few years. I said, I just don't want to. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do it.
Right.
So I'm going to write a book.
Right.
So I did. I wrote a book. I wrote a couple of books. I wrote dedicated toward alcoholics.
Right.
Not AA books per se, but dedicated. The 12 steps and a lot of the spirituality of the 12 steps in mind for those books. I had a book, first book, so 10 years ago called Real Meditation for Real Alcoholics. And I have another one that I wrote about 5 years ago. I don't know if I'll write another one. What we decided to do, my son and I decided to sort of go into business with an app that basically shows people how to meditate.
Oh, nice.
I invented not a meditation app like the kind that you're used to. I do a different type of meditation that I developed over the years. I call it non-contemplative meditation. I don't know if you want me to talk about this or not, but I'm not really necessarily. I'm not here to plug anything really.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious.
Okay. I just want you to know that that's clear with me. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. We developed an app that it's been on. We just basically came out of beta this year. And we're now just starting heavily marketing it, and it's a meditation app. It's not like meditation that you're used to. It's not New Age or New Thought or Eastern traditions. It's not tied in. There's no mantras and no bells and no hypnotic. In goes the good air and out goes the bad air. None of that stuff.
Right.
It's non-contemplative. It's not visualization. It's something a little different, and it works. And I raise my kids on it. My wife does it. We have people all over the world using it every day.
What's it called?
Well, the app is the meditation is called non-contemplative meditation. That's meditation. I didn't invent meditation, but I had to invent a name for it.
Right.
And so I coined that name, but it's. The name of the app that has it is it's called the C app, SEC app.
Nice.
Yeah, and I use it. I use the app occasionally to make sure it's working right.
Right. That's important.
I meditate every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. I'm glad you reached out, and it was super interesting.
I saw your we want to start our podcasts, and I wanted to be a guest on some podcasts just to get back, because I did some podcasts like 10 years ago.
Right.
And they're okay. Podcasting wasn't then what it is now. It's much more readily available. We got Zoom. It's much easier now.
Yeah.
And the audio quality is better and everything else. And I went just randomly looked up podcasts, for recovery, and I saw Drunkalogs. I said, well, that's the one. That's the guy.
Amazing.
Yeah, because up here, I don't know, maybe you experience this too. People are like, oh, not another Drunkalog. I got to hear a Drunkalog. It's almost a bad word.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, no, I've never felt that way. I've always felt that drunk, because what was it like? But you buttress that with what I was like, and you've got some good stuff there. You have to tell the drunkalog.
Well,
You,
to me, like the reason I started doing it was I was doing a lot of stand-up comedy, and like every comedian's got a podcast, and like,
yeah,
as a, you work in the film and TV business, it's so hard to get things going. There's something wonderful about stand-up in that, like, I can go out and just do a set of stand-up and nobody can really stop me, and like nobody can stop me from doing a podcast or making a TikTok. Like, I don't need to ask permission to
right.
I don't no one has to approve those projects. And so that's why I kind of started the podcast. But, I'm fundamentally, like, I say this at the start, but like what I'm interested in, and I don't know if it came across in this conversation, is not, I'm not a rah-rah recovery guy, but I'm interested in recovery in the context of a life. So what interests me is, I'm very interested in what informed the addiction, like why, and your story has lots of that, obviously, this crazy mistaken identity and this
Yeah, yeah.
alcoholic family and all this, growing up in the Bronx, there isn't enough money, you go to Wall Street, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm also interested, I'm probably the most interesting thing to me is like what happens after. And, like how alcohol, how recovery shifts the trajectory of a life. That is what really interests me, because that's storytelling, that's change, and like, and the thing that's great about about this podcast is the best stories are three-act structures. It's, beginning, middle, and end.
Sure.
And every drunkalog comes with a beginning, middle, and end. It's how it
And,
was, what happened, how it
right.
is now.
No,
And
sure.
so, from an audience point of view, the audience knows, every story is a little bit different and a little bit the same, but they're all going to have like some sort of
Common thread.
triumph, and there's going to be, so, it's sometimes it's a long way to go, and but that's why I do it, and that's why I like it.
Yeah. And the commonality of it too is always there, even though the stories change, the particulars change, the backstory changes. And it always comes down to, as you pointed out, it comes back to the types of things that I experienced, that you experienced too, which I don't know what they are. Maybe I'll find out one day. They are, it comes down to that resentfulness. It's no coincidence that when you go to 12 steps, they prep you with the first 3 steps, and then bam, they go right for the jugular. Who did you resent?
But it's interesting. So you have grown children. I mean, have they struggled with addiction?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, whatever, like, whatever. I'm like you. I started drinking when I was
Yeah.
13, and didn't stop until I was, 40. And, and my kids have experimented with at least alcohol and probably pot, but they're not obsessed with it the way I was. Just
Most,
like,
most kids do. It's going to be hard to believe, but my son has never tasted alcohol, never smoked a
right.
cigarette, never smoked pot. He can't tell you what a beer tastes like. 28 years old. Now, right away, you would say, "Oh, you must be some crazy, authoritarian
Right.
dictator in your house or something, hitting people in the head with Bibles or something." Not at all. Not at all.
Obviously not, because if you were, they would be drinking. You know,
Good
that's the
point.
thing, is like that,
That,
that iron fist does not work.
yeah, that's true. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, she did experiment. She
Right.
did. She tried it. Not in a big way, but she had one semester in college. She went to Holy Cross up in Massachusetts, and all my kids graduated with honors. They all graduated with honors, including her, by the way.
Nice.
But one of her semesters, she got mixed up with some drama club people,
Right.
theater people, and we all know about them. And she tried it. She tried it, and very limited way. She had a couple of drinks. I think she tried the pot, and she came to me after the semester, and her grades went down. Her grades
Right.
instantly went down. And she wants to go to law school. She's studying. She's taking her LSAT.
LSATs now. Right.
Yeah, and she's taking her second one pretty soon. Hopefully in February. And she came and she said, "Dad, I got to tell you what happened." And she told me. She said, "I tried it." And she was in tears, and she was really sorry that she did. It definitely wasn't worth it.
Huh.
She
I
hasn't
mean,
touched.
my kids have not been as forthcoming, but I know that they have. And they're younger, but they're so much older than I was. So
They were older when they did the experimentation. You mean?
yeah, I mean they're I've got two teenagers, so they're both still in kind of in the thick of it, but that's better
Why
than
did
12.
people- I don't know how old you are. You're younger than I am, I would assume.
Yeah, I'm 53, I think.
Okay. So even 50, even over 50, I don't know why people our age and younger than me, why do we start so early? We just see that they don't do that anymore, really.
No, they don't. And I think it's cultural. I mean, you grew up in a house where, everyone was getting fucked up all the time. And I grew up in a house where everyone was, my family stayed together until I was 12 or 13. And like, whatever, we had a fair amount of money. Like, so there wasn't like, there wasn't that sense of whatever desperation. When my parents got divorced, it's like, oh, we moved into separate big houses, it wasn't, but there was still that like,
Yeah.
there was still a lot of emotional emptiness and a sense of abandonment that no amount of money can really cure. But and my parents were very high functioning drinkers, but like drinking was what went on in our community. They were young. I think part of it was also they were younger when they had us. Like, I don't know how old your parents were, but my parents were, my mother was 20 when my brother was born
Uh,
and, 22 when I was born. So that's pretty young to be a
that is-
parent, whereas I wasn't a parent until I was, 35. So I'd gotten a lot of drinking out of my system by the time my kids were born. So
wow. Yeah, my mother was 20. They were 18 when my mother was 18 when they married. My mother was a real hotsy totsy. She was very glam.
nice.
She was, yeah, she looked like Jackie O walking around.
Right.
You know,
So, I think that's part of it, so, you grow up and that your parents are so much younger and they're partying and that's how they have fun, whereas like, my kids, like, how do I have fun? It's like, I create things, I play tennis, I collaborate with other, creators and like, that's where I get my excitement from. And so you're sort of modeling a different kind of behavior than our parents modeled for us, I think is a big part of it.
cool, excellent.
So,
Well, anyway, I did have fun.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for making it fun.
No,
I hope you have usable stuff there.
No, it's great. It's great. I tend not to do a lot of editing because I'm lazy. So it'll just be a long episode.
Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunklogs.